Hello and welcome to this episode of the Housing Geospatial podcast, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything that relates to either housing or geospatial, preferably if there's a little bit of both. Housing Geospatial was formed as we believe place matters for social housing and that geospatial information is woefully underrepresented within the housing sector. This series is around sharing a collective knowledge within the housing sector. You can find us either on LinkedIn or feel free to head on over to our website at www.housinggeospatial.co.uk. I'm your host Chris Kinnear and our guest for this podcast is the inspiring Pam Whitman, who is the Strategic Development Manager at Ordnance Survey. Thanks Pam for coming on today.
Thanks Chris, I'm very good to be here. Thank you very much.
So,
looking forward to it.
The first question we always ask everyone is, how are you involved in either housing or geospatial?
Okay, so I've been working at Ordnance Survey for about 28 years. So that's where my sort of background in geospatial started. Before that, I was actually in financial services, so I didn't study geography or geospatial. So I came into an area of Ordnance Survey, which was known as Solution Centre. And Solution Centre was really about our customers that the off-the-shelf products didn't quite meet and they needed something different to meet their needs. And so we used to customise maps and data. And actually, it's quite similar to what we do today, actually. So, 28 years ago, we were probably at the forefront of what Ordnance Survey is about. So, it was a really good place to work. And it was just looking at what customer needs were, what problems they were trying to solve, and then how we could change our data or change our mapping to meet those. About 15 years ago as well, I got involved with the Association of Geographic Information. They are an independent geospatial industry body. And I started working with a group in Wales called AGI Cymru. They are the sort of voice in Wales for geospatial across Wales. And I became chair of that for a couple of years, which was absolutely amazing. And it was just really good just to be at the forefront of what geospatial means in Wales. I then moved to the council and became a director of AGI. And again, that's AGI covers cross industry. So you've got the public sector, private sector, research and education and charities. And it was just a really good way for being knowledgeable about what's going on in the industry, but also being at the forefront of how we could change what's going on in the industry for geospatial. And yeah, it was a really good time actually for me, and just networking with different people, finding out what other people are involved in, and just, as I say, just being at the forefront of moving geospatial forward and being able to influence what happens. So that's really my background in geospatial geography. I'm still here after 28 years, so clearly quite passionate about it.
That's awesome. So the big question we've got to ask is, I guess, in a sense of, can you give us a brief history about who Ordnance Survey is and what they do for UK geospatial?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ordnance Survey is a government department. It's actually now a trading fund. So it's a limited company and we're fully owned by government. So we started off 240 years ago, I think, creating the first maps of the UK, starting off in Kent because of the Napoleonic War and the risk that we might be invaded. And from there, we've grown through sort of consumer mapping. I think everybody knows our sort of orange and pink maps, our Explorer and Land Ranger maps. And that's a really big, important part of, for people that want to get outside, they want to go walking, they want to go cycling. So we still do a lot of work around our sort of get outside programs and our paper mapping. But actually, Ordnance Survey is very data centric now. We are all about data. We're a big data organisation. And we capture 20,000 changes to the landscape every day to 500 million features. So that's a lot of change that's occurring. And Ordnance Survey has the public task to capture all that change. Now, that could be big changes, so like a new hospital, new houses, new roads, or it could be a shed in someone's back garden. And we have different ways that we capture that. So we have surveyors that are out on the ground. They're busy with their sort of RTK kits, which is all sort of GPS related, pinpointing objects on the ground. And then we have a sort of program of flying that happens every so many years to capture other change that we don't capture sort of by ground survey. And we started using a lot of drones now as well. So we're kind of moving with the technology, bringing that into our toolkit, and just making sure that we're catching all those changes, which go into a database, which then our products come from.
That's awesome. Like, I love Ordnance Survey. When I got to go there a couple of years ago, it was a bit like travelling to my sacred place, seeing all the different people working and seeing all the map creation and editing. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Can I mean, you've been at OS, like you said, a long time, 28 years. That's amazing. How's your role evolved over the years, and what is it that you're doing now?
So I've worked with mostly public sector customers. So I was at Ordnance Survey when the first pan-government agreement was created, which was a way of getting our data out to more organisations across the public sector, paid for as a sort of group payment to sort of get value for money and efficiencies from the data. So I've worked with a lot of public sector customers over those years, and I've worked in sort of transport sector, local authority sector. I now work in the land and property sector. And so I've been working with large government departments that have a remit for land and property. And very recently, I am the lead for the entire sector and the entire ecosystem. So my role is very much now around, what does the surveyor need from Ordnance Survey? What does the conveyancer need? What does the developer need? And just looking at all those different sort of aspects, that it's not just about government policy and how you can deliver that. It's actually what the market needs as a whole. So my role's changed quite a lot actually in that respect. So that's quite interesting for me. And we work a lot with our partners to make sure that our end customers are getting the kind of support they need, the kind of products they need, just to help them solve the kind of market problems that they're looking at. So yeah, it's still a bit about government policy and making sure that's being delivered, but it's also a lot about helping people make decisions with better data.
That's really cool. And especially for us in housing, that's really important for how we know what a land site is and everything else. And this ties us in really brilliantly to our next question. So Ordnance Survey has, for the past couple of years, been working on something called the National Geographic Database, or NGD. Can you tell us a bit more about it, please?
Yeah, of course. So the National Geographic Database is where all those changes that I talked about sit, and they go into our database. And from there, a number of products come out. Some of our products are quite old now, so some are over 20 years old. So the NGD is a way of looking at our data in a slightly different way, not so much as a whole product, but as a suite of data that you can choose different elements from. And the OS NGD comes in 9 themes. So particularly of interest for this particular sector in housing, looking at things that support retrofitting, how you manage your property portfolios, how you might want to identify development sites. We've got buildings, that's really important. We've got so much enriched data that's come through in our buildings theme. So we've got a number of floors, for example. Does it have a basement? Is there a solar panel present? What's the building made of? That's really quite important. How old is it? So we're starting to really sort of bring in data that can be used for analysis and just really rich and a greater richness of information that can be used. So we've got buildings, that's really important for the housing sector. We've got land, so lots of land features. What's the land used for? So we look at, is it sort of mixed woodland, for example? And we're going a little bit step further. So again, with that sort of principle of enriching our data, it's like, is that piece of land still being used for the purpose it was originally used for? Or has that changed? What's that land use looking like? We've brought in also things called sites. So this is looking at a particular area and how everything kind of fits together. So is it a construction site? Is it a development site? Is it a residential area? Is it a commercial area? So NGD is just bringing a lot more information that people could use, particularly in this sector. Those are the ones that are really adding value. Just to give a couple of examples, Chris, using land use, addressing, and just the land features. Government department has used this to identify vacant and derelict land. And this was for DEFRA actually, just so that they could look at how they can increase the amount of woodland in the UK. But equally, that kind of can be used for biodiversity. It can be used by a developer to understand what the biodiversity net gain is. There's lots of different uses for that. So I think that's a really good one. Land use is just so much, there's just so much information that you can get now. You can also use the buildings data and addressing, and you can link that to sort of flood risk areas. So you can bring in postcodes and kind of look at it at a high level, you know, what would be affected. You can then bring in the address so you can see actually which properties are affected. You can link that to vulnerable people data and understand, you know, what risk is there, what mitigation you might need to take. And then actually you can bring the buildings data in as well, so you can go down to an even deeper level. And then you've got all that information like number of floors, you know, what's going to be impacting that property. Does the age of that property make a difference in terms of flood risk? And you just start to build up that analysis and just build up that really rich picture of what's going on. I've got a few more.
Yeah, please tell us as much as you can. I love NGD and I want the world to know how good it is. So yeah, please tell us as much as you can.
Yeah. So another really great use case is like for fire risk. So if you've got the building type, the construction type, you've got the number of rooms, number of floors, and the connectivity between different buildings, you can start to understand better what the risk of fire is. So you've got fire in one building, how's it going to spread? And then if you've got things like, you know, what's the roof made out of? If you think they've got a few thatched properties or something in close vicinity, rather than just having some addresses and so these may be affected, you can start to see that actually there could be more risk here or less risk here. And I think that's what this NGD brings. It's such that real ability to see what's on the ground without actually having to visit the ground and just help with those decision-making decisions that people have to make.
You know what? I hadn't thought about the thatch one. So like there are two big things which I wish I'd known about NGD when I started back at my previous housing association. One was just finding all our tall buildings like straight away after Grenfell.
Yeah.
That was so difficult to understand. So having NGD is kind of that base layer going, here's the buildings that we think are probably over 18 metres and things. That's amazing. And the other one is solar panel presence. You know, I did a project where we were lucky that we bought our aerial imagery, but I had to go to each of our areas and it took me a few days, and basically I just put on a Boolean function essentially. I just said yes or no, does it have solar panel? And we identified something like 500,000 of revenue a year because we didn't know where they were.
Brilliant.
Because we weren't doing the contract with the energy infrastructure.
Yeah.
So, but the thing that's really got me thinking is the thatch and building connectivity. And actually, yeah, if you know you've got combustible materials and the building is connected, that then suggests building risk, which then you can create proper mitigations for.
Yes.
Because as, you know, we've seen it, a landlord's just got a spreadsheet of addresses. They don't know if something's connected or not.
That's right.
And that works with terrace housing as well. If you've got a whole row of terrace housing with gas installations, you know, you combining it with other data for gas source, you can then create a risk profile for certain homes. Yeah. Oh, sorry, that's brilliant. That's absolutely awesome.
The other thing about OSNGD as well, Chris, is it contains unique OS identifiers. So that each of the kind of features, where they appear in a different theme, they all get linked together. So when you're looking at the property, you've got all these different IDs that are all telling you, you know what you're looking at, and you know that it's accurate. And we can also link those IDs to the address, and we've also got a unique property reference number in the address, the UPRN. And with that, you can then start bringing in third-party data as well. So in this sector, the energy performance certificate data is really valuable to help you understand what your rating is and therefore what you might need to do to bring the rating up. And then you link that back to all the attribution that you're getting through on this building. You know what kind of retrofitting solution you might need. Does it already have a solar panel present? You don't need to look at that. And it's just bringing all that information together. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about OSNGD. It's how you can bring things to a property level, and it's not just about Ordnance Survey data. It's about bringing all that other information that exists about a property into it. And I think that's one of the valuable things that OSNGD now allows, particularly with the address, as they all link together.
Yeah, I remember when we were using MasterMap, and MasterMap's a great product. For most housing providers, they're probably still using MasterMap because that's what everyone's been using. But it was quite hard to get detailed information out of that. But now with OSNGD, there's so much you can bring through, and the pricing it's okay. It's really good for small scale stuff. It's not necessarily brilliant for the nation. Like, we tried to buy building data for the whole country in my last company, and that was quite a lot of money. But if you're just focusing on individual areas, or the UPRNs of your homes already, and you're bringing through that building data, that's relatively cheap a year.
Yes,
which is awesome.
yeah. And also you can pick and choose what you need. So if you've got which is around retrofitting, or you've got a use case around managing, a portfolio of properties, you don't have to have a product that's got absolutely everything in it. You can just pick out the bits that are useful to that particular use case. And then you can just kind of, look at it from a different lens, if you like, depending on what you're doing. So if you're looking at ground maintenance, for example, you might want pavements. You might want to know where they are. You might want to know where trees are in gardens, for example. Things that you need to know that you're responsible for maintaining, or making sure they are maintained. And you can just bring those things through rather than, 3, 4, 5 different products that will try and give you that. So
yeah, that's and that's the other thing, that the fact it's so customizable, that's really beneficial for licensing. It might make it a bit complex in the initial phase when you're trying to figure out what you want, but once you've got that, you can just bolt on, remove. I think that's really, really cool. And that kind of ties us in really well to our next question about, so we know where OSNGD is now. What are any interesting future releases for NGD? What's coming up in the next 12 months or beyond, sort of thing?
We've launched a huge amount, Chris, over the last sort of 2 years. A lot of the building stuff has come out. One of the things that is kind of next on our list is you mentioned OS Mathematic Topography layer. That's like 23 years old. And we know that at some point that's going to come to its end of life. There's no dates or anything on that, but we just know that it's old now, so at some point we want to change. And so the next thing that we're going to be looking at is OSNGD as a base map. So how do you create the equivalent of OS Mathematic Topography with within an OSNGD? And today you can go so far with it. You can get the buildings, you can get the land, you can get the roads and the water networks, but it doesn't have everything that you might need that would be a full replacement. So our next thing is the space map from OSNGD, which will then hopefully be used with all the other attribution in NGD. You can get it all in one place. So that's one thing that's coming. We have also launched our version 3 of NGD Address. This has got the full Royal Mail path data in it. So that's quite exciting for us. It's got some geospatial elements to it as well, not just the data. That's just going to change how people use addressing.
So does that contain because one of the big things with PAF, there's two big things with PAF. One is postcode, but the other one is unique delivery reference point.
Yes.
So for those who are unaware, let's say you've got a block of flats, your delivery entrance might be at the back of the building, and how you get to that entrance. Is that coordinate contained as well?
Yes, that's in there. So you get the name and numbering from the local authority, and then you get the postcode from the PAF file, and you get the delivery point address, which is what you've just described as well. So you kind of get two addresses. You get the official local authority address, but you also get that where is the post actually going through a door.
That's genuinely brilliant, actually, because that was one of the challenges. We bought Address-Based Core, and we found it had the UDPRN ID, but it didn't have the coordinate attached with it. If we wanted the coordinate, we'd have had to pay, I don't know how much more it was, but it was enough for us to go, we can't afford that. But knowing that's already contained within NGD Address version 3, that's awesome to see, and that's brilliant. And that's really supportive for tradesmen and everyone else when they need access to a building.
Yeah.
Our thing was in telecoms, so when we
Okay.
wanted to access a building without affecting residents.
Yeah.
And that's why we were looking at that.
I think the DPA is also really useful for those kind of last mile use cases as well. You know, when you got deliveries going in and you want to know exactly which side of the building you need to be on,
Yeah.
for example.
And there was there's someone who I know who's trying to build that data set for Europe.
Oh wow.
And they I can't remember how many hours are lost because of finding delivery points.
Yeah.
Like you just follow the postcode and it takes you to this random place. It's like, I'll actually get where I go to deliver this package.
Yeah.
And they're trying to build a whole product around that. And that's one of the great things that we've got in this country, which I don't think many people realise.
Yeah. No, you're right. Absolutely. So it's good.
So you've mentioned GeoPlace just then. OS and GeoPlace work really well together. Can you tell us a bit more about what GeoPlace is and some of the work they do?
Yeah, so GeoPlace started as a joint venture of Ordnance Survey and the Local Government Association, and they are the source of all UK addresses and streets. So they take information from various sources. So, like I said, they take the local authority address, they pull in information from Royal Mail, they pull in coordinates and grid references from Ordnance Survey, and there's quite a lot of other things that go into making that address. So they are the responsible, I want to say authority for that, but you know, bringing everything together, that they are responsible for that. And so GeoPlace do all that, and then that information comes out in our address-based products, and then will come out in OS NGD addressing. And we work quite closely with them because we see the value of the unique property reference number, which is a really key part of the data that GeoPlace pull together. And that unique property reference number is just, there's so many different ways that it can add value. So we work really closely with them to look at how we can bring that UPRN into government data that can then be brought through into the use cases in the sector. We look at how we can improve things in the sector by using the UPRN for various things. So an example, Welsh Government have been using it for their multiple index of deprivation. So this is looking at where there are small areas in Wales where they might need to put some measures in place to, you know, increase equality, increase the number of services. And the UPRN helps you bring all that information together. So a large lot of what we do with GeoPlace is also making sure we've got the best address data possible, but also making sure we're getting the best use out of it as well. So across markets.
I think talking about that UPRN, I think this is probably a really good time to talk about it quickly. I think UPRN is probably one of the most underused aspects within housing. Because a lot of housing providers you talk to, they go, oh, I've got UPRNs, but that just means that ID number within their database. Or, in my former organisation, it was just their property ID number, whether that was a unit or for a building, and if they sent you a list of mix of them, it's like, oh, here's our UPRNs.
Yeah.
That was my experience, and having to untangle that was quite interesting.
Yes.
Sorry, carry on.
Oh, no, go.
I was just going to say, like, I think one of the ways, so like telecoms, for example, they only deal with UPRNs. They don't deal with random IDs. They only deal with UPRNs. And that's part of their target. So when they pass that on to governments, they use the UPRN. So having that links. But I also think healthcare is one of those massively underutilised functions with housing associations and healthcare providers.
Yeah.
And the UPRN ties that all in as well.
It does, and it also allows you to bring in other information. So if you've got vulnerable people and that you've got a duty of care to them, you can link it to a property, not a person, and you can then say, well, what's needed at this property to make sure that we are making sure our tenants are okay and things like that. So
I think that brings us quite nicely onto our last question. I think we've talked quite a bit about buildings and OS data and how that you are a huge supporter of building more affordable homes, and the fact that we've now got in the AGI, they've got a housing network group to try and get more homes built.
Yeah.
How from your experience, how do you find that geospatial supports the development of new and affordable homes?
It is a tricky problem. I think OSNGD has good uses of identifying where homes can be built. I think there's so many things with affordable homes. We've got people that are homeless, living on the streets, living in hotels, living in cars and vans, and it's how do you get them into something that is affordable? And I just think I generally don't have the answer to this, Chris. I really don't. And I know that, others like the AGI are looking at it, but I think OS data does have a role to play here. So is it about finding the right development sites? We've just included in the buildings data a status flag that says whether a property is under construction, constructed or derelict. And derelict means it's not lived in, but it does have a roof. Now, I just wonder if there's a way that, government, developers, there's a way of bringing those properties back to life. I know local authorities have a responsibility around this, but is there more that we can be doing? And does our data help support bringing those properties back to life? Or is the land usable for, a very small development or something, or small houses? I don't think that's going to go a massively long way to fixing the problem, but I think it goes some way. And I just think there's just this, we know what land's being used for. We know what land has been used for. Can it be used to identify brownfield sites, grey belt area? I just think there's a lot around the land use that can maybe help find sites for affordable homes. But yeah, as I say, I don't actually have the answer to the problem, but it's something I'm quite passionate about.
I think you're right with that. I didn't know about the derelict flag as well. That's awesome to see, because you could, let's say you're a developer, you could look at an area, identify the derelict homes, see the building material, the building age, and if it's got an EPC, and if it sort of works relatively well, let's bring that back in. I think, yeah. And I think also the sites data set, because that has sort of land use attached to it and everything else, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I just think if there's a way to use the data to give you candidates to go and look at and decide whether that's a suitable area. It's also kind of supports the government's target of having I can't remember the figure, 1.5 million new homes. I think it just being able to identify things that you might not have chosen before because you didn't know about it, just is another way of looking at where can we put regeneration, where can measures be put in place. I just think there's a little bit around, because you know so much more, that you can put it into models and then just work out where it might work. Yeah. And then you've got those candidates. I think that's where Ordnance Survey data really comes into play.
Oh, Pam, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been brilliant hearing your insights and your experiences. If anyone wishes to get in touch with you, what's probably the best way for them to do that?
Thanks, Chris. It's been really great, and thanks for the opportunity to come and talk. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, please contact me on LinkedIn, or you can contact me at Ordnance Survey at pam.whittam@os.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And to those of you who've been listening today, thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to get involved in the podcast, please feel free to get in touch. Again, you can find us either on LinkedIn or on our website at www.housinggeospatial.co.uk. Thank you so much and have a good day.